say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch potatoes unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because it's our space, our final frontier. Granted, sitting on the couch may not get us very far, but you never know what might happen watching this series of series we're about to discuss. Ha ha! My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, exclamation point, is kicking it, summer style, and hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and by Google Play to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Stranger Things, iZombie, The X-Files, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., New Girl, The Originals, The Crown, Once Upon a Time, Orange is the New Black, 13 Reasons Why, A Series of Unfortunate Events, and Fuller House. We've published several episodes in our Looking Back series covering such diverse shows as Friends, Sense8, Battle Creek, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, and Marvel's Agent Carter. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Grace and Frankie, American Horror Story, Doctor Who, The Good Place, Gotham, Schitt's Creek, Arrested Development, Game of Thrones, Supernatural. Will and Grace, the Marvel's Defenders panel, will talk Season 2 of The Punisher, and the DCTU will revisit all 4 shows in the CW's Arrowverse. We'll be launching new panels covering Westworld, Jane the Virgin, The Americans, Riverdale, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Altered Carbon, Mr. Robot, and Charmed. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll take a smallish look back at a short-term show from some kind of yesteryear called Freaks and Geeks, and we'll revisit one of the all-time and most watched classic sitcoms, MASH. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers and comedy shows and Comic-Cons, and we just went live from Blue Bridge Games to take a shiny look back at Firefly. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, so make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play. In the meantime, if you don't hear a show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we always seek new panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback. Just keep your phaser set to stun. It's the polite thing to do, after all. Today's panel and I are launching a new Looking Back series, the biggest Looking Back series we've ever launched, by request of one of our panel members and our second most involved panelist, by a hair, who made such an impassioned speech about this series of series at one of our live Comic-Con events. We were moved to embark upon this now continuing mission of galactic proportions. If you aren't already aware, from time to time, CPU will be choosing shows of all types, but usually of some fame or notoriety to reminisce about and to consider whether or not they age gracefully, like a Vulcan deeply committed to the pursuit of logic and science, or don't hold up as well, like a doctor who's not anything but a doctor, such as a babysitter, an engineer, and so on and so on. As such, this is another chapter of our Looking Back podcast episodes, wherein we review a show that has been gone, either via natural end or cancellation, for some time. And this is but one chapter in a 30-episode or more series in which we will explore each individual season of a science fiction universe that comes back without never completely going away in cycles that have recurred for more than 50 years. Today, we launch this mega-series which will cover the entire Star Trek franchise. In fact, today, in our first discussion, we'll be looking back at one of the most enduring canceled dramas of all time, a program which spawned said franchise after a misguided cancellation led to a healthy and growing cult following, the likes of which encouraged the production of 13 films and 6 current sequel or spin-off series with at least 2 more on the way. Today, in the first episode of our series, we'll be discussing Season 1 of Star Trek, the original series. Each new episode in this new CPU podcast franchise itself will progress through subsequent seasons of all the Star Trek TV series with additional coverage of the films. Furthermore, our panel will be rotating moderation duties, though as things often work around here, yours truly, your friendly neighborhood chief couch potato and captain of the Starship CPU, we'll be kicking the whole thing off. Also, at various points in this mega series, we'll present top 10 best and bottom 10 worst episode lists around various themes chosen by the moderator in question, as we tend to do with our retrospective series. We can't get started without a tiny bit of plot summary and praise, though, so let's talk Star Trek. Star Trek is an American science fiction television series created by Gene Roddenberry that follows the adventures of the Starship, USS Enterprise, NCC 1701, and its crew. It later acquired the retronym of Star Trek The Original Series, or TOS, to distinguish the show within the media franchise that it began and to which I previously alluded. The show is set in the Milky Way galaxy, roughly during the 2260s. The ship and crew are led by Captain James T. Kirk, played by William Shatner, First Officer and Science Officer Spock, played by Leonard Nimoy, and Chief Medical Officer Leonard McCoy, played by DeForest Kelley. Shatner's voiceover introduction during each episode's opening credits provides the starship's purpose. Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Scene. The series was produced from September 1966 to December 1967 by Norway Productions and Desilu Productions, and by Paramount Television from January 1968 to June 1969. Star Trek aired on NBC from September 8, 1966 to June 3, 1969, and was actually seen first on September 6, 1966 on Canada's CTV network. Star Trek's Nielsen ratings while on NBC were low, and the network canceled it after 3 seasons and 79 episodes. Several years later, the series became a hit in broadcast syndication, remaining so throughout the 1970s, achieving cult classic status and a developing influence on popular culture. Star Trek eventually spawned a franchise consisting of 6 television series, 13 feature films, numerous books, games, and toys, and is now widely considered one of the most popular and influential television series of all time. The series contains significant elements of space western as described by Roddenberry and the audience in general. Although this series never won any Emmys, Star Trek was nominated for 13 Emmy Awards in its 3-year run. 8 of its episodes were nominated for one of science fiction's most prestigious awards, the Hugo Award, in the category Best Dramatic Presentation. In 1967, the nominated episodes were The Naked Time, The Corbomite Maneuver, and The Menagerie. In 1968, all nominees were Star Trek episodes for this award: Amok Time, Mirror Mirror, The Doomsday Machine, The Trouble with Tribbles, and The City on the Edge of Forever. Star Trek won for the episodes The Menagerie and The City on the Edge of Forever, respectively. In 1968, Star Trek, the TV show as a whole, won a special Hugo Award for dramatic presentation. In 1967, Star Trek was also one of the first television programs to receive an NAACP Image Award. In 1968, Star Trek's most critically acclaimed episode, The City on the Edge of Forever, won the prestigious Writers Guild of America Award for Best Original Teleplay, although this was for the original draft script, not for the screenplay of the episode that aired. In 1997, The City on the Edge of Forever was ranked number 92 on TV Guide's 100 Greatest Episodes of All Time. Not to mention, Star Trek, in various forms, features at least once on all of the best of lists at CPU Tracks. Where the original series is concerned, in 2004 and 2007, TV Guide ranked Star Trek as number 1, the greatest cult show ever, on both lists. In 2013, TV Guide ranked Star Trek number 12 on their list of the 60 greatest TV shows of all time. The Writers Guild of America gave the original series number 33 in its 101 best written TV shows. Empire Magazine ranked the original series number 43 of the 50 greatest TV shows in 2008 and number 30 on the same list in 2016. The Hollywood Reporter ranked the original series number 35 on its 100 favorite shows list. cast. Time magazine called it one of the 100 all-time TV shows, and Rolling Stone magazine ranked it number 18 on its list of the 100 greatest TV shows of all time. Today, in part 1 of our many multi-part Star Trek series, our modestly sized crew of Enterprise faithful and Trekkers extraordinaire, all familiar CPU voices, along with your very involved moderator, will talk about the finer and less fine points of every single Trek season in the history of time, in the city on the edge of forever, or at least West Michigan. In this episode, we will be focusing specifically upon Season 1 of the original Star Trek. It should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed the entire original series, and other series, but that's for another time, and may discuss sensitive plot points. So for those of you who have not watched Star Trek, first of all, we'd be happy to beam you aboard. And second, if you plan to do so, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. At this time, I'm going to introduce the panel, and they all know how this works, but I'm now going to remind you, listener. I would like you, panelists, to tell us your first name, just your first name, not your whole story. Tell us how you came to discover Star Trek, any of the series. You can just talk about how you found Star Trek. What made you start watching? How did you find out about it? What kept you watching? Did you watch all of Star Trek, the original series? And then how would you rate your interest in Star Trek, the original series? And because we're doing looking back, tell me how you feel at the beginning of the show when you first started watching, and how you felt by the end of the 3 series. And you can do that with or without the animated series, depending upon how you feel about the animated series. I know there's lots of stuff, but this is a very unusual and large series. But we're doing it along the CPU character question, which changes, the standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do, which goes like this, and thankfully there's only 7 characters. But here we go. Are you ready, panel?
Ready!
Good, that was enthusiastic. So, how do you feel about Star Trek, the original series, with or without the animated series? That's for you to decide. Captain's log, stardate 6022019. The Enterprise is the best ship in the galaxy, with the best crew, and the best set of captains and commanders this side of science fiction. You only have eyes for the Enterprise and for Star Trek, for after all, quote, there is no such thing as the unknown. Only things temporarily hidden, temporarily not understood, end quote, like Captain James Tiberius Kirk. At times it can be completely illogical. For the most part, however, you find Star Trek intelligent and its characters, including its captains and commanders, compelling. Though you would never betray such emotional sentiments, you can't imagine a life without it. Live long and prosper, like Lieutenant Commander Spock. You're a doctor, not a TV critic, for crying out loud. You enjoy the characters, but some of the situations in which they find themselves are almost too unbelievable for words. Still, you don't think watching Star Trek is a waste of your precious time, or you watch it because your friends watch it, like Doctor/ship's surgeon, Lieutenant Commander Leonard Bones McCoy. Hailing frequencies open, Captain. What you like about Star Trek is that it presented a world that promoted equality and diversity for all races and genders and alien species, even if some of the stories occasionally struck you as silly or nonsense, like Lieutenant Nyota Uhura, a head warp factor 1 captain. You don't know how you feel about the original series or cast. In some ways it was ahead of its time. In other ways it was painfully low budget and dull, but you do like the idea of piloting a ship devoted to exploring the stars. Oh my, like Lieutenant Ikara Sulu, yes, I did that on purpose. Enemy vessel approaching, Captain. You didn't find Star Trek until much later in your relative life, and occasionally experience a love-hate dynamic with the saga and the series and the original cast, even if you find yourself feeling affection for a character or element or two, like Ensign Pavel Chekhov, or, you're giving her all she's got, Captain. I can't do Scottish, so I'm going to keep going. Look, she's a fine ship, and you're happy that the saga lives on. But you just don't see what all the fuss is about above decks, no matter how hard you try, like Lieutenant Commander Montgomery Scotty Scott. With all of that said, who would like to start?
I'll go first.
Okay.
My name's Kyle.
Hi, Kyle. Hi, Kyle.
Hi. Based on the characters, I would say James T. Kirk.
Okay, but how did you find Star
Because the original series is the first Star Trek I ever watched. I couldn't even tell you how old I was. It's always been, I think my dad would watch reruns with me when I was a baby. It's always been there. And I've always felt the more of the connection to Kirk, Spock, McCoy than I did the other crews. I still love those shows and I enjoy them, but the original is Star Trek to me. Everything else is an offshoot. I don't know, it's like the first show I remember loving. And so it's always going to have a special spot no matter what, even the goofy episodes.
So you're James T. Kirk front
Yes.
to back?
Yes.
Would you like to include a dynamic here? You're not married, but this time.
My sister-in-law is the moderator. My wife sat this one out as she's not as familiar with the other Star Trek series.
Yes, that is true. Kyle and I won't fight, but it's always good to have the dynamic. Welcome back, Kyle. Kyle is on many of our nerdy podcast panels, especially comic book related.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hi. So, how did I come to Star Trek? How much time do you have? No, seriously.
I mean, seriously, some, but not a lot.
Yeah. So, like Kyle, I was introduced to the original series at a very young age. It was something that I was introduced to by my dad. I can remember going to see the movies, actually. I think that one of the very first Star Trek movies I saw in theaters when I was like 6 was Star Trek 4. I don't remember that one as much as I remember Star Trek 5, which was the kinda not that great one. But I remember it vividly going to the movie theater with my dad and my brother, and I can remember like being literally only one of 3 people in the entire theater. It was just like the 3 of us. And, you know, because we knew the movies at such a young age, we would watch the original series when it was in reruns. It was usually like late at night or something. Because, you know, we were kids, and my dad would always be like, oh, hey, the original series is on, and the original effects and everything. So there's that feeling of like, oh, I remember my childhood watching this show. And of course, I remember the animated series too. It used to air on Nickelodeon in the mid-'80s. And that was one of those things where it was like 60s nostalgia. So they would air the animated series of Star Trek. They would air the Monkees. I can remember watching the Monkees on Nickelodeon in the 80s. And a bunch of other like kind of old series. So I loved the animated series as a kid, and I think I liked that more at the time. So I'm more of when I started watching Star Trek at that age, I was a Dr. McCoy. You know, I watched it because my dad watched it. I liked the characters, but...
And you're a doctor, not an engineer or
yeah,
something?
pretty much,
Okay.
exactly, you know, and the whole idea of just like, well, some of this is just silly, but, you know, it's fun, and I'm not wasting my time. Now, in my adulthood, after I've revisited, like, every series and been introduced to all of the offshoots and everything, I'm much more of a Uhura, because I like the diversity of this and the groundbreaking aspect of this show. Although it's funny how, looking back, I feel like the show isn't as groundbreaking as it tends to be presented as, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But anyway, but I like the diversity of it. I like the idea of all the characters coming together and everything. So that's how I am now.
All right, welcome back, Michael.
Thank you.
Michael is currently on our Stranger Things panel and
Excited for season 3.
Yes, the Good Place panel.
Excited for that one too.
Yes, and you do a bunch of our looking backs, and you'll probably be on our MASH panel because
Heck
between
yeah.
you and Sarah, I've heard about MASH for 3 years.
Yeah.
And what's this about Quantum Leap? What? Oh, sorry. Now we have.
That's in the future. I'm gonna have to edit that.
No, let it go.
We're not ready yet, but that is a panel
Okay,
that's
good.
coming. Yes.
Hey guys, if you
Nobody
want
said
Kylie
no
to
boy.
bump that panel, you gotta tweet at us.
Yes.
It's kind of true.
Because we are ready to go. That whole panel's
my
like in
God.
the room.
I was going to say, I could do
like
every
the year.
season from my memory.
Yeah,
Just do it real quick.
I
Okay,
do too.
we're talking about Star
Oh, dang
Trek.
it, okay.
today.
My turn.
Okay.
I'm
Sorry.
Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Sorry to talk about Next Gen, but that's how I got into Star Trek in general. As a
Okay.
little kid
I'm
watching
going to tell a very
reruns,
similar story.
I don't even remember how young I was, but I would just catch, I think it was on the UPN network. Hopefully
Yeah.
N doesn't stand for network, otherwise that was redundant.
United Paramount Network. Yes.
The network. That's when I started watching Next Gen reruns, which as I got older and had a job and could start buying DVDs, I started buying Next Gen on DVD each season as the time as it came out. And then I wanted to watch the original series just to get, because they already...
Context.
They would,
Yeah.
context,
Oh,
they
of course.
referenced stuff. I will say, it wasn't that long ago, but it was long enough ago that the internet didn't make it easy to find that stuff. You would just have to go into a Best Buy or your local video rental store and hope that they had. And it was 2 episodes on a disc, and it was like, do I want this one? It's from season 3, and I'm not done with season 1 yet.
What are those words? Video rental store?
They still exist.
I'm totally joking. I'm older than Nick, so I got it.
It's like you beamed into the past.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so that's how I kind of got into Star Trek. I definitely enjoyed Star Trek, the original series, but I'm gonna keep the animated series out of it.
It's not canon anyway.
It's true, yeah.
But we'll be covering it in this series.
Yeah, it's still homework. So I think I have to say I'm a Bones, because as much as I've rewatched the original series a couple times, and I'm rewatching right now for this, and I'm enjoying it more than I remember the last time watching it, because it doesn't, we'll talk about what aspects of it hold up or don't, but it definitely is of its time in its pacing and storytelling, and there isn't like a B story ever. It's just a 50-minute one story that, I don't know, part of me needs more.
I don't like B stories, but that's another thing. That's another podcast.
Anyway, the B stories. So
Good title.
I also think I need to be Bones, because I am remembering that it starts getting a little awkward in season 3.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I
so
think
much to talk about.
the Bones description helps balance that out. And I think I answered all your questions, but the next person who's going to talk is my wife, Sarah.
True. Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks, Kylie.
I've already mentioned you're the second most involved panelist by a hair.
I'm the third most.
That's true. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Love that wave. That very good wave.
Pageant wave.
And
Yeah.
while we're ranking things, Kyle's
Kyle's fourth. I know.
I've been last place.
You just keep working on it, Michael.
Hey, after this,
one
though,
of 30
This is gonna rocket you.
Awesome.
okay, so I
Rocket.
did not watch Star Trek as a child.
What made you start?
I'm not there yet.
Let her tell her
I do remember seeing Next Gen in syndication. It would just be on, and it was a thing, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't. I don't think I'd ever seen an original series. In fact, I used to watch The Muppet Show, and they would do Pigs in Space, and I did not know that was that. So that's a fun thing. When I started dating Nick over here,
Hi.
we were watching the same show, coincidentally. We were on the same season of the same show, which was Quantum Leap. Sorry to bring it back there, but that's what it was. We were both getting season 4 for Christmas. That's how we knew it was true love right there. But after we finished Quantum Leap, we would trade off, like, let's watch this series. Okay, now you pick a series. One of them was X-Files, we've talked about. And then I was like, what are all these DVDs you have that are like, because the original series ones comes with 2 episodes on 1 DVD. So there's like so many of those.
40 cases.
Yeah, there's a lot. And so he was like, oh, this is Star Trek. We should watch Star Trek. And I'm like, okay. He did not start me on original series because he thought I might be a little bored. Because of, as we've already said, it's 50 minutes. It's one story. And that's just not what our like present day sensibilities are used to seeing. So we went around the back way and started with Voyager and went on from there. But I didn't really enjoy it the first time around a ton, but I didn't hate it. But now we're rewatching it again. I'm a little disappointed. I thought I was going to be the only one that said Bones, but it's like everybody said that, so now I feel unoriginal. But
Everybody didn't say it.
2 people said it.
I started with Bones, yeah.
Kyle
Oh, I thought you
was
said,
third.
but then you moved to Uhura.
I started out with Bones and moved to Uhura.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, so I'm going to say I started, when I first watched it the very first time, I was probably just a Scotty on that, because I just didn't really connect to it, but this time around, I'm definitely a Bones, and that's all of your questions. Dynamics, I'm married to Nick.
Hi.
Yeah.
I've known Kylie and Michael a pretty decent amount of time,
Yeah.
and Kyle's my neighbor, so
So you go.
we're all friends here.
We're one big happy family.
We are.
Of Trek enthusians.
And
Trek
yes.
enthusiast.
Trek enthusiasts.
I embraced the Trek so much that Nick told me I had to stop telling people I was a Trekkie because he's like, you don't tell people.
You gotta feel out the room.
I thought it was really cool. So
Well, welcome back, third most involved panelist, Sarah.
bronze medalist of the CBU network.
We'll work on it. And of course, I've mentioned that my name is Kylie, and I came to Star Trek. It's funny that Kyle mentioned his dad and Michael mentioned his dad. I would mention my dad, who's no longer with us. But I remember throughout my childhood, if Star Trek, the original series, was on in syndication, he would have it on. It was his little kept secret. It's not something he talked about, but he always watched Star Trek, the original series, if he caught it. He watched the movies pretty regularly. Star Trek 2, I think, was his favorite. And then when The Next Generation came on, he would watch The Next Generation. Now, I never paid a lot of solid attention to Star Trek until Star Trek The Next Generation came on, and I started watching it with him, and I said, oh look, it's the kid from Stand By Me! And I said, what's Geordie LaChance doing on Star Trek? And if you don't know me very well, you should know that Stand By Me is one of my most favorite movies. And Wesley Crusher doesn't have to shut up! I was in love with Wesley Crusher because he was Geordie LaChance, so I started watching Star Trek The Next Generation.
It just sounds like you're saying Geordie LaForge wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, are you saying Geordie LaForge?
Geordie LaChance?
Who that?
His name is Geordie
Will Wheaton in
LaChance
the
and
movie.
Stand By Me.
Will Wheaton didn't play Geordie LaForge.
Yeah, Geordie LaForge.
Okay, you all need your ears checked. We're moving on.
I've literally never seen Stand By Me. And I hate that I said literally. That's dumb. But I've never seen it. I know.
It came out when I was 9, and it was the movie that all of us girls watched at that age. Because it had him and River Phoenix and Corey Feldman right as he was just turning crazy. And Jerry O'Connell when he was young and chubby. It's very fun.
Yeah.
The next season of Castle Rock's like a sequel.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Ace
But
Merrill.
that's another podcast. Literally, probably ours.
We're on that.
I think so.
Okay.
We'll look into it.
Okay.
Okay.
I
haven't gotten very far.
Sorry. We're nerds.
We're big nerds.
Can't help
So I watched Star Trek. Now, the moral of this is I started watching Star Trek The Next Generation, and Wesley ended up leaving shortly thereafter because the fan base pretty much yelled him right off the show.
In the 80s, by the way.
I know, in the 80s,
Yeah.
around 90,
It
90
was
or 91.
also the execs.
Well, that too.
That too.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, they made
You know, in 10
decisions.
episodes.
We'll get there when we get to The Next Generation. But the good news is, even though he left, I had fallen in love with the show itself by that point, and a little bit with Patrick Stewart. And then because my interest in The Next Generation had blossomed to obsession era levels, if you watched our live thing that we did at Grand Rapids Comic-Con, that was hinted more than once, I also just started consuming all the Treks, including the original series, in a very concerted way. And so I start to love all of it. Now, the original series is not my favorite of the ones that are out there. There are characters I love. There are episodes that I love, and we're going to talk about that. I would still put myself beginning to end as a Spock, though. I'm not James T. Kirk. I'm not like in love with it as my brother-in-law is, but I do think, though at times it can be completely illogical, it is still intelligent. The storytelling is thoughtful. The characters are thoughtful. The storytelling itself is ahead of its time. We'll have to talk about context.
Yes, of course.
And how
Context.
important context is. But I actually really enjoy the original series, even parts of season 3, but we'll talk about that when we get to season 3. So welcome! This is our Star Trek Mega Retrospective Series, In Space, The Final Frontier. Now this is our retrospective series, which means it's less as in-depth as our water cooler episodes, which cover half seasons or whole seasons, but it's more in-depth than our typical looking back. So we're going to talk about actual episodes, themes, storylines, things that we really enjoy or didn't enjoy about each season of every Star Trek series, and then we'll also cover the movies in some special event episode, I'm sure, somewhere down the line. So we're starting with the first season of Star Trek, the original series. Let's start talking about it. We're going to go from the general aspect. What do you want to say about Star Trek?
What can we not say about Star Trek? I mean...
So it takes place on a ship.
Called the USS Enterprise.
Yeah.
Trekking through the
They're
stars.
trekking through
This is
the
a
universe.
good start, guys. You're supposed to be a little bit further ahead of the line.
Okay, I'll say that if you haven't watched this show, or you tried it and are a little disappointed with how many male white characters are on it,
Yeah.
this is the 1960s.
Yes, there we
Yes.
They are fighting the TV execs, and some of the backstory is
The civil rights movement and the women's movement were contemporary to the show.
That is true. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Gene Roddenberry was a popular TV show writer. Whenever he guest wrote for a show, it was one of the most popular ones, so networks kept offering him shows. And he would write pilots, and they would start working on scripts. And he would do these things that would really upset them, and he would add strong female characters and minorities, until he finally, and I'm paraphrasing, but he would said, fine, I'll set it in the future and I'll paint them green and then I can tell my story. So he basically had to just keep casting white people. He did get Lieutenant Uhura up there on the bridge and a lieutenant, which I think NBC didn't quite realize what fights they would get into with that. But then he also made Spock intentionally not 100% Vulcan because interracial marriage was still illegal. I think that year the Supreme Court made a decision and people were still very upset about it.
Loving v. Virginia, anybody?
So it doesn't seem like it holds up, but it is pushing the boundaries so hard. Like it's not season 1, so we don't have to go in depth, but they didn't air a certain episode in the South because it was so controversial. And the execs, they didn't treat the actors really great, and there's a lot of other stuff that they're using the science fiction backdrop as metaphor to tell these stories about diversity and having to use aliens that look like white men a lot to do it. But you still have George Takei on the bridge, and it's as diverse as they could.
And they also had, in season 2, this is until the second season, Walter Koenig comes on as a Russian
during
character.
the Cold War.
During the Cold War.
Which I think, too, people are like, well, maybe less now. But
I was to say, now you don't even think about it, but
Exactly,
when you actually
Well, maybe
consider
they're
the
thinking
time
about
frame.
it more.
No.
Well,
And Takei, George Takei was literally in a Japanese internment camp as a kid. So, that's how not that far
removed.
Yeah. It's hard.
It's a little hard. I'm seeing things that upset me when I watch it, but I have to remind myself that this is way before the Me Too movement.
Yes.
But there was a scene in an episode where, what episode is it? I wrote it down. Enemy Within, and there's 2 Kirks, and one's really wimpy or sensitive, and one's bad.
The
And
transporter accident.
yes.
And one of many.
And he tries to sexually assault Janice Rand. And then he runs out, and the other Kirk comes in and is basically, like, slapping her to try to get her to talk. And she's just, like, traumatized. This person tried to, like, rape her. And nobody gets him out of the room, and nobody listens to her, and nobody, like, is there for her. Which, I get it, Beck. I'm not, like, I'm not trying to say that they're bad people, but watching it today, I was like, Nick, why doesn't somebody help her? The doctor, why doesn't he take her aside or give her a Xanax? I don't know. Like, Kirk was, like, slapping her face, and she was, like, scared of him. So
there's 2 things there. It is the product of its time.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
We're still not great with that in real life.
No.
50 years later. And I think sometimes the writers don't balance, like, in this instance, it's probably not as in this area, but it's in the future where some of these things are, like, supposedly we're done. Like, this is the future, we're done with that kind of thing. It doesn't happen. So it's like, oh, she must be hysterical to think this even happened. And that doesn't always read well either.
So 3 comments that I have. Even though Star Trek was ahead of its time in a lot of ways, I still think it struggled with the gender piece of it more than anything.
I agree with that.
The metaphors that they were striving for at the time were more along racial equity and harmony because the civil rights movement was so at its height. And in fact, that's my second comment. Nichelle Nichols seriously contemplated quitting the show after the first season.
This is my favorite story.
And was talked out of it by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself, who said, no, you're doing something. You're in a place that none of us have ever been before. You have to stay on the show. And so she did. And it was one of their family's favorite shows to sit down around just to look for her character each and every time. But when it comes to sort of the female-centered stuff, so another piece of context is one of the primary scriptwriters on the original series is D.C. Fontana, a female writer who Gene Roddenberry had her changed to this pseudonym, the whatever you call the writer's name, to D.C. That's not her actual. That's not what she goes by. Yeah, it's Dorothy or something, because he was afraid that if people found out a woman was writing, and she's got some of the most lauded episodes of the series.
She's a brilliant writer.
Yeah, if people found out she was writing it at the time, there would have been even more backlash than there already was. So I think a lot of what we see in terms of what Sarah's hitting on, I mean, there was a lot of things they were trying to tackle in an environment that didn't actually connect with the audiences that they were supposed to be connecting with at the time it was on. So in some ways it did a lot, but it couldn't do everything.
But yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I mean, it was still so far. I mean, just look at City on the Edge of Forever, Edith Keeler preaching and being smarter than all these men around her. And, like, you didn't see that on TV back
Played
then,
by Joan
anywhere.
Collins.
Yeah.
we'll be talking about her in a future episode.
And I love that episode, but then they basically indicate that through her bleeding heartedness, she causes...
Started in World War III
Yeah.
and was
Which-
single-handedly...
That's a brilliant episode. I'm
It
not
is.
saying
Oh, it
it's,
is.
and
It's
it's
great.
also DC Fontana script doctored it. She didn't write the original concept.
Correct.
Yes.
But you know, in the pilot, Majel Barrett is first officer,
Number
Number
one.
one.
and they didn't want that.
Yeah.
That was
They
one
were
of the
not.
test audiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they said it was more female test audience members said things like, who does she think she is? What is she doing?
Yeah.
Like
So
that.
bad, ladies.
It's a very complicated
Yeah.
legacy.
And
they-
it's, so there's an interesting balance of some
Remember,
of the,
the baby boomers were children at this point.
That is true, yeah.
some of the comments made. One of the first episodes, Kirk says something about, I had to have a female yeoman. Like, there's a lot of that.
It is one of the very first.
But then there's
because
also-
Janice Rand was a big deal.
Yeah.
And there's also, but then there's also like female doctors, and it's just not something. It's not a big deal. I think it's the one where she gets ESP or something. But there's a couple characters throughout the series that also it's not a big deal that in the future women have these other positions, which back in the 60s people would still say a woman doctor as if it was not a good doctor. So
Well,
it's
it's
so
a
tough.
Very complicated legacy because I actually agree with you, Sarah, on what you're saying. That the whole idea that on the one hand the racial diversity was such a huge thing for the show and it was absolutely important that Gene Roddenberry wanted to have that in there. But it's so complicated because my understanding now is that when the show was up for cancellation after the second season, it was the letter writing campaign that saved it was largely spearheaded by women. Women were the first fans of the show, and that they were largely responsible for bringing the show back after that second season. And that, you know, of course, DC Fontana was one of the writers, and there was, you know, Nurse Chapel, there's Janice Rand, there's Uhura. These are very iconic female characters on this show. But even despite of all of this,
Look what they made them wear.
Exactly.
That was going to be my
You
next
know,
point.
mini skirts.
Yeah, they're
that
not
are
wearing...
very, very short mini skirts.
And then all of the
Yeah.
other women are barely in any clothing. It's like
I know.
All
I
the
was like,
aliens
It's
are
just so
scantily clad.
complicated. It's just-
it is complicated, and it's a very nuanced situation. And I don't not respect it. I think they were doing the best they could for the time they're at. It's just to watch it now. I'm like,
Oh, you got
stop.
Her hand was over her eye, and
Yes.
she was doing a dramatic gesture.
And I don't
Yeah.
I don't
Sorry,
know if
yeah.
it's
I'm the same way. Like I cringe at certain the whole idea of a woman in every port. I mean, literally, Kirk has a woman in every spaceport.
Well, he
and
is quite the
romances.
player. We'll talk
Yes.
about that. Oh, Kirk.
yeah, it is tough.
He
I
had a
don't
kiss quota, I'm pretty sure of it. It was in his contract.
Probably.
I don't know how. Yeah, the dynamic is I don't know if it's Paramount at this point or not, but there's
Paramount
definitely
comes in not on the first
or
season.
NBC or those execs.
Yeah.
I know they were always fighting with Roddenberry and about certain things and like Uhura's script. One of the reasons she wanted to leave is she would get a script about her character or a strong part that would get cut down to a scene.
Yeah.
and then a lot of times that would be cut down to hailing frequencies open, Captain.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and it's important to note that Star Trek would never have seen broadcast if not for Desilu, which
Yeah.
is
Lucille
Desi
Ball.
Arnaz and
That's
Lucille
Lucille
the
Ball.
Ball
other
was
thing
one of the
I
only
Yeah,
ones I
oh,
could give
yeah.
a shot.
Yeah,
Isn't that funny?
it's awesome.
She's
She's
Lucille
awesome.
Ball is an amazing person.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just you
Another
think
looking back.
huge comedy.
Some other day.
Oh yeah.
That would be Kristen's big dream. Panelist Kristen's big dream.
I'll be there for that one. Anyway.
I don't know if we want to dive into episodes or other legacy things, because not only...
Whatever you want, Nick.
Every show, I mean, at this era, and even in the 90s and early aughts, I mean...
We were talking about this about
all
with
of
friends.
these shows are getting these recognitions.
It's
now.
true, and it's hard because we're watching it with a different lens now, and we're like, oh, that's not okay. Like,
Yeah.
we talked during Friends about some of the gay references, and we're like, oh, you can't say
Well, and
that.
just like what a man would do or not do.
Yeah, gender roles, and it's so weird to go back. You can't put Pandora back in
I
the
think
box.
it's hard
Right.
because Star Trek has this legacy, and that if you weren't around back then, or weren't watching it, or not diving deep into the history of it, you're just casually watching it, it would be tough to realize that, oh, it is doing all these things that Next Gen tried to do, and then definitely Deep Space Nine. I mean, the main two characters in
And
Deep Space
Voyager.
Nine. And then going forward even more,
love
Voyager.
it. Love it.
And now Discovery. It keeps moving forward, and it's more of that beacon of diversity. I wouldn't say more, but it's more obvious now
Well,
for those later
I think it's
episodes.
easier now for them to say, no, we're having diversity.
Yeah.
I mean, I like when you take into context like the first seasons of Doctor Who, though. I mean, it's just amazing what they did in this. Like the
With
original
low
Doctor
budget.
Who is very, very misogynistic
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
True.
and
That's very true.
very not diverse. So when you like compare it to other shows of the time, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then what they've been able to do with each series just gets better and better.
Well, and the rant about Friends also applies to this. I mean, guys, I'm glad that we're living in a world where our eyes have been opened and we're much more welcoming to fluid gender identity and racial equality, although not as open as we should be, because look at our socio-political arena. That's another podcast. However, there was an evolution that had to happen before we could get to this point. So if you go back and you watch something at the start of the evolution, then no, it's not going to be great.
It feels different. Yeah,
It
it's
feels
Called
different. Yeah,
history.
that's a really good
History
way.
is where, and so Friends was in the middle of this kind of time frame. Now we're going 30 years even back before that.
I think
Yeah.
this is a show that needs to remain in TV history, but also civil rights history. I think it's a
Indeed.
great
Hear,
example.
hear.
Whether or not you enjoy Star Trek or science fiction, this is science fiction done really well. It's
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best way to
I mean, some of the episodes about like their take on war are still like what's it called? The one where they removed all the fighting.
It was
And
done
you
by
just-
computer.
Yeah, I'm like,
Oh.
we're kind
A
of
taste
getting
of
there with
Armageddon.
the
Yeah, we're almost
drones.
there.
Taste
Like-
of Armageddon. Taste of
Jeez.
Armageddon.
Yeah.
So that's a really good episode, and these goofy things, and maybe overacting, and
What was it, the ultimate computer?
A Taste of Armageddon, I think.
Well,
Oh,
it's
Taste of
the one
Armageddon.
where
Right,
they
right.
remove all of where the
computers
wars
are the
fought.
ones
the
that
actual
are
destruction
right.
of culture.
Yeah.
But
And you
you're
just
still losing
report,
life.
oh, you died, Kylie, so go to
Go
that.
to-
Yeah.
Go to that death
I was just
chamber.
struggling.
I wanted to say suicide
Suicide
booth.
booth,
yeah.
It's not. It's not Futurama. Well, it kind of is Futurama.
We already covered Futurama, and Nick and Michael were on the panel.
Yeah, you were too, weren't you?
I was not, but can
Oh,
we say
okay.
how excited that I got that?
Very good.
Yeah, see, there you
I'm
go.
going to have to bite my shiny metal ass.
I won't.
Okay.
I won't. Bad Santa. Who's the Santa? Devil Santa?
Robo?
Robo
Yeah.
Santa.
Yeah.
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 Mhm. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, we
It's
can cut that.
everybody who's naughty, which is everybody.
You know what? One of the interesting things about this show is there's like 3 stars, and
Three credited
everybody
ones, yep.
3 credited stars.
Yep.
They really those stories are those 3 people. Everyone else
that's
is
true.
just, and that is great. I'm not putting it down, but it's so different in contrast to the rest of the Star Trek, where it's pretty much
More ensemble based.
more ensemble. So it's kind of interesting. Like there was one.
I mean, I would almost argue the Next Gen movies almost did that with like Picard and Data. They,
Oh,
all the other
that is
people got
true.
pushed to the
Yes.
side.
Yeah.
So it's
Which
like
is a-
it feels like the writers were kind of like always trying to go back to that same dynamic.
It's weird because I think, I don't know, I haven't read this or anything. I think Roddenberry wanted that crew feeling, and he obviously wanted more episodes about Uhura, and Scotty got a little more. He's kind of the 4th.
I think Scotty and Chekhov
Get some episodes.
get some
They get
episodes.
some, yeah.
Sulu gets some episodes.
Yeah.
It's just not
And
as
Uhura
much
gets, like,
like
3.
the future
Yeah.
ones. Yeah.
And again, without having B stories, that's also hard.
Yeah, it's- yeah.
Correct.
to rotate through, even though they had more episodes in a season. But I feel like Roddenberry wanted more of that too, because the movies for original series are more like that.
Yes.
Especially 5 and 6. Like they have Well, I mean...
I think you're kind of right
4
in
is
the
really
movies.
ensemble.
Yes, 4 is, and it's...
It kind of flips
kinda one
from
of the
like
best
the
ones.
series that's like the main 3, and then the movies are more ensemble. But Next Gen, the show's more
Yeah,
ensemble,
exactly.
but the movie,
Yeah, it's the
like
opposite
for each
that's
series.
interesting.
Because they don't... there's too much interference trying to make a Star Trek movie good, quote unquote,
And
instead of
popular
Star
and
Trek.
a hit at the box office, which are big things.
But that's
Yeah.
always what I want, is the ensemble. I like
Yeah.
ensembles in a lot of shows more
Well, and I did read that in the 60s they structured it differently, whereas they wanted to have a star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
And
Which was clearly
Yeah,
Shatner.
it was Shatner, and
Well,
that
it was
was
supposed to be Shatner, and then once Spock blew up, and
There's some
They all love
ridiculous
that.
Yeah,
stories about
Spock
how
is-
they would
yeah.
try to suppress Nimoy and basically not give him anything. There's
again,
some
he
weird
was very
things
popular with women,
so
too,
that he
that's the
wouldn't
other thing.
demand more money.
Nimoy.
Yeah, no, he was.
Those eyebrows.
Spock and Bones are my favorite. They are
Oh, I
my
love them.
favorite.
Oh,
and
They are
I
way better than Kirk, yeah.
They are, and even though that's it's actually one of the things I like about the original series that sets it apart is the friendship between Kirk, Spock, and Bones. I
Yes.
love their
Yeah.
banter. That's
They
what
have a
makes
great
it fun.
Agreed.
So, and I do. Nimoy is just fantastic.
Well,
I
again,
love
and
him. R.I.P.
like I know what happens in the movies, and now I'm watching it again, but I'm like, oh, and then later and their friendship, and they're gonna do this and that, and it's hard because I know, but it's like that is the classic.
And I love the rivalry and the digs that Spock and Bones exchange with each other, even though they clearly
Yes.
love and respect each
Yeah.
other.
Yes.
It's constant haranguing. And that just, maybe that feels familiar. That happens in my family a lot. I don't know. I just love that friendship so, so much. And then Kirk with his brashness as the counterpoint to the other two. So, yeah, even though I love the ensemble aspect, and I think that ultimately that's what works best for Trek, the original series has this component that makes it uniquely the original series.
Yeah. And those 3 actors have a unique history in that era. They were both sort of character actors, but they were fairly well known, at least Nimoy and DeForest Kelley and William Shatner, they're veterans at this point in the 1960s.
TV character
Yeah,
actors.
they veteran TV character actors, and so they were almost like they were due this show that showcased them because they were workaday actors trying to find something that worked for them.
Isn't it so weird to think that it wasn't Shatner in the pilot originally?
Yes.
And that guy, what was his name?
Jeffrey
Pike.
Hunter.
Yeah, Jeffrey
Oh,
Hunter.
Captain
and-
Yes.
Yeah, Pike. Good. I wanted both of those names.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he he did the pilot and then he didn't want to do it. And do you
Well, and
think?
was a
test
little-
audiences felt that he was too unhappy about his job, that he was miserable.
Oh, no.
And that it was
Well,
hard
he
to
does
watch.
portray
Which is-
that. I mean,
And that's
he
how
does
it's written too,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
the mission he's coming off of.
And that directly affected, because he got to, William Shatner saw the pilot, and he thought, if I was this character, everything would be an adventure. I would look at everything with fresh eyes, and that's how he did his audition, and then it was history.
Which
do you
brings
think
a lot
that
to it.
that guy Jeffrey Hunter's every second kicking himself?
I don't
Well,
know,
yeah,
because the original series cast went through kind of a roller coaster of, I need space from this,
Yeah,
get
that's
me
very
away.
true.
They've come around, and sometimes it's hard to tell how genuine it is, sometimes I don't.
Yeah. I mean, there's
No.
especially the time between the end of the series and then Wrath of Khan, they were all pretty much completely wanted nothing to do with Star Trek.
Mhm.
And
The 70s convention era. That
Yeah.
was interesting, yeah.
well, and then just nobody wanted to hire him because there's oh, that's Kirk, oh, that's Spock, we can't see him as anything else.
Yeah.
I think the grumpiest person has been Walter Koenig, but he's come around. I mean,
He's still not a peach to me. He's a grumpy. You
But he
no,
goes to
Grand Rapids.
he
conventions.
does. He's weird though. He'll go to conventions and then get mad at you for bringing up
Star
Star
Trek
Trek,
stuff.
wanting to talk to him about Star Trek.
What else
He's
were you
always-
in, sir?
Yeah.
I don't know you from
Babylon
other.
5, but anyway.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't Babylon 5.
Yeah, he was kind of meant to replace George Takei because they didn't know where.
He was
how they
running
did-
George got cast in a movie during the first and second seasons, so Chekhov was supposed to
I thought he was running for mayor.
I don't know. I
Was
thought,
he running?
I
Not
thought
at
he was.
that time, was he?
I
I
thought he
don't
was,
know.
but
I'll Google real
Maybe
quick.
you're right.
I'm
I
not
thought
sure.
it was a movie that I read.
Whatever it was, it didn't take, so he stayed, and they didn't get rid of Chekhov, so they ended up
Chekhov was
they
actually kind of
went back
popular
and
with the
forth.
ladies.
Yeah.
But they would split their dialogue.
The reason is because he
and
looked like...
the monkey.
The
yeah,
monkeys.
he looked like Davy
They were,
Jones.
they were going for a demographic. And
Uh-huh.
That's why he was cast, too.
So he was bitter almost at the get-go, and up until... If anyone's seen that episode of Futurama, I've listened to the commentary where they bring everyone but Scotty, and obviously DeForest Kelly had passed at that point as well. The writer said, Koenig pulled him aside and was like, everyone has the same number of lines except me. I have one less. So he's like, I'll write one more for you.
That's one of my most favorite Futurama episodes.
It's really good, especially if you love Trek. It's very good.
Yes.
I can't
It
find
mentions
it
the
now.
Great Star Trek Wars and the Great Star Trek and the Great Star Wars Trek.
Maybe we need to do a part 2 to our Futurama
Maybe.
podcast.
Clearly, there's some unresolved.
I know.
It's
we
so
went over
good.
it very quickly, but we're on Star Trek right now.
I'm curious what everyone's favorite episodes are.
Are we segueing?
Yeah. 'Cause
All right.
Good job.
For me, my favorite episode of Star Trek ever, City on the Edge of Forever. For me, it's the perfect science fiction story because you don't need the gadgets or the gizmos to tell, like, this human story and about emotions and just really great acting and, like, hardly any sets, and it's minimalist, but it's still, like, the best story I think Star Trek has told.
So we have to focus on season 1, although this is episode 28.
Yeah.
That was at the end of the season.
Sorry to tell you
It-
this is not
it
a
is.
good interjection, but you were right. It was a movie. The
Okay.
Green Berets.
Yes.
I don't know why I thought the other thing.
I thought it was the other thing too, and I'm not
So,
sure.
but anyway,
I had to do some research because I was moderating this one. City on the Edge of Forever. So, because we're doing the retrospectives, what I do usually, and we all have our own styles, because I think all of us have done this now except Michael. Michael, is this your first retrospective? The big multi-parter looking back?
Maybe.
Okay. So what we do is we kind of pick some of our favorites, we highlight some of our least favorites, and then we have kind of a bigger list.
Okay.
From season 1, City on the Edge of Forever is going to feature in my top 10, but it's my second favorite. There's one I actually like more, and that's Balance of Terror.
That's my third favorite.
What is
After
that
Space
That's the
Seed.
Romulan episode.
Yeah, the first Romulan episode.
And the first, we get Mark Leonard, who plays Sarek,
Yes.
as the Romulan commander, who, other than, like, Khan, the Romulan commander is, like, my favorite Star Trek villain.
So watching Star Trek the first time, and I'm going through it a second time in whole for this podcast series, to me, Balance of Terror is the episode that really becomes everything that Star Trek is, all at once. All of the storytelling up until that point is great. There's some good episodes up until Balance of Terror, which is episode 14. But for me, it's really intense. You've got the Kirk versus Mark Leonard's Romulan commander. You've got the Romulans being introduced, and they become a pervasive villain throughout all of the Trek series. So it's very tense. It's very good storytelling. It doesn't feel, you don't feel the 50 minutes like you do in some of the other episodes. City on the Edge of Forever is so good, but there is a little schmaltziness to it, and I kind of like the message of Balance of Terror because it was more of a metaphor of the Cold War.
Yeah, and it shows you, I mean, it's amazing showing you that, oh, these people on the other side, these enemies, are just as human as you, and they're worried.
Yep.
And
Plus
it's
there's
just
that
showing
whole-
both sides of essentially the Cold War during the Cold War.
Yeah, it was just an amazingly written episode for my own personal. And then for third, I have Space Seed because
Yes.
Space is my second.
I have 3 tied for 3 in this one because I cheated. But Space Seed because Khan.
Yes, because Khan. And that is a brilliant episode, honestly. No, okay, go
That
ahead.
drop,
Go ahead.
I was surprised that was low on my list, and rewatching it, it wasn't as enjoyable for me.
Oh, I love it.
I love it too.
I totally forgot about that lady. I was like, Nick, who's this lady? He's like, babe.
A groupie.
Well, but then
They mention her in the movie.
yeah, because I was like,
She
she's
dies,
not in
yeah.
She
the
dies.
movie, and he's like, yeah, that's the whole point. Is why
Yeah,
they're
that's
I'm like,
kind of the
I
whole
guess I
wrap.
forgot. I did not remember her.
It is the motivation for him to come after Kirk.
Yes. Mhm.
The first time through, I fell asleep during The City on the Edge of Forever. That is not a commentary about that episode. That is a commentary about me. But this time through, I ranked it as my favorite of this season. And I knew I liked it before. I think I fell asleep and I was like, why don't they save her? Like, what are they doing? Rude.
You just forgot the whole...
Hashtag rude. But some of the highlights of that episode are Bones' wild eyes.
Yeah.
He's like,
Just
he's
running
got
around
great
yelling
wild eyes.
assassins.
I love it.
love
And he's very sweaty, and it's very... Because they could have done some, like, crazy effects makeup, but they didn't. They were like, hey, DeForest, we're just going to need you
Go
to have
nuts.
wild eyes and be sweaty, and he did it. And I enjoyed
He
that.
was kind of
Watches.
handsome too. I just am going to say that.
I think of him as being old, because in the movies, and he is a lot older than
the
us.
rest of them.
Yeah, he was
He's 10
one-
years
he was
older
one.
than the rest of the cast.
Yeah.
But now, watching it, I keep saying to Nick, he's so young. He looks so young. Nick's like, I don't know.
And he
This is how
has
looks.
such a lovely smirk, and he turns
Beautiful
on
eyes.
flirtiness too.
Yeah.
He has beautiful
Southern
eyes.
charm.
Yeah.
He does get at least one
His
episode
eyebrow
where
acting.
he is the love interest of somebody, but I can't remember which episode that is offhand. I
Is
think
it the
might be
one
season
where
2.
it's all the magical stuff that appears? I think.
Yes,
it
with
is.
the white
okay.
rabbit.
Yeah. The
No,
white
there's
so
rabbit.
that is the
there's
season.
another
Shore
one
leave.
where we meet a
Yeah.
lover from his past, and I
Okay.
They
she's-
mentioned
maybe
it in
that's
the
what I'm
movie
That's season
because
2, I think.
he always
No,
said
the
he's
very
gonna-
first
yeah.
episode. That's not the man trap. Is the one that has his four.
Is that the
former-
salt sucky lady?
Salt sucky lady?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
cool.
I'm thinking there's
that is season 1.
Yeah.
I might be thinking of a different
I think you're thinking
one.
of a different season, but they mentioned her in the first movie because he was going to go back to her after their 5-year journey, and then it falls through.
Because I think he slaps her, and then also in that episode says, "I'm a doctor, not an escalator," which is one of my favorite bones.
I put for my number 2, I put the cage / the menagerie. I can't, in my head, I can't. It's hard to.
You can't
That's 3
differentiate between the
episodes.
two because,
That's-
yeah.
It's
One,
it's
it's
true.
one,
Basically
it's
the
one movie,
same.
essentially.
Yeah, it's a movie. Good, thank you. That's what I needed. I really enjoy it, and I don't know why, and I don't care.
No, I agree with you.
Is it
That's-
good? Okay, no one else was saying it, and I
No.
get self-conscious because clearly I have no taste. We've established,
I mean,
but
You
So
know, it doesn't rank for me, but I thought that the original pilot was well done.
I
Yes,
think
I agree.
I'm a big Majel fan. I'm sure we all are.
Majel Barrett.
We'll
Feel
see.
free to just chime in how much we love her. But
She becomes Nurse Chapel.
yes, and she,
The
She's,
voice
she's
of
already started to
Loxana
be
Troy.
the computer voice.
and she's the computer.
I will go to bat for Majel Barrett any day. Go ahead.
I really like her as number 1.
Mhm.
She also looks very good with every single hair color ever.
Yes.
But I really
That's
enjoy
true.
her as a brunette. But I like her portrayal. I think she's powerful without being a bee.
It was matter of fact. It wasn't even just
Right.
like it wasn't
This is
even a
my
big
job, and I'm
deal.
gonna. This is
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
She was playing it like anyone.
Funnily enough,
Yeah.
Spock is more histrionic in the pilot than
Mhm.
she
Oh,
is.
yeah.
Yes.
So-
And I like them. Then is it the menagerie? I mean, looking
That's
at
the
Kyle
one where
because
the
where
man-
the
Spock
yeah.
takes it.
Pike back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. I like that one.
wheelchair.
Because I remember when I watched it and the mystery of it. Because I mean, Spock just going like off the rails, and
Yeah.
nobody knows why. Not even Kirk, who's his best friend, and it plays out really well.
And then he says, "Yeah, court martial me."
Yeah, so I was gonna say I like the menagerie, which is the 2-parter with the wraparound, more than the cage, because I do like that added storyline and the checking in. But I think the first time I watched this, I didn't realize, they didn't get Jeffrey Hunter to come back. So
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
There's something
It's
to
just
say.
a weird makeup. Yeah.
And I'll also say on the DVDs that Nick bought originally, and that's the format we first watched it in. They're in a different order. Everything's in a
Well,
totally.
yeah. I mean,
I think Netflix is doing release order.
they are.
They are doing release.
And which NBC really changed it from
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
it's
That
why
was common
it's why
practice.
Rand was only in
Mhm.
like 6 or 7 episodes, but she's really late in the season a couple times because they
Yeah.
shuffle things around.
Because I don't even think the cage was on there, right?
The cage is on there. It's the very first
The cage is
episode.
it's number 0.
Number
Yeah.
0.
And
I
it's-
mean, in the
so-
ones Nick has on DVD.
It's the 80th episode.
Okay.
Ends with the
So it would have been the last one I watched. So now watching it again, I just love it. I think it's a really good pilot, and I think it's a good premise with the girl being like deformed, and I think it's great.
That came at a time when they were like falling behind schedule, and Roddenberry was like, I still want people to see the pilot, so that was his way of coming up with how to get it out there and fill 2 slots. Like, I'll just write these little scenes that'll fill it out, but it's still really good and really
And it
engaging.
also shows Leonard Nimoy because he said because Christopher Pike was so emotionless, that's how he felt. He had to play
Yeah.
Spock up as more emotional, and then when he was, as soon as he the dynamic with Shatner was so emotional and full of life that he decided, I'll bring it back down, and that became the Spock that we all know. So if they hadn't made that pilot, we would never have quite the formula we have.
we wouldn't have the species of Vulcan that we have.
Yeah.
That's
Crazy.
I gave my number 3rd spot to Space Seed. I don't know if I love Space Seed or if I just love it because it becomes Wrath of Khan, and I
It's
love Wrath of
important
Khan.
to look.
It is
understand
important.
So I think that's why
It's
I
important,
like
and I
it.
love Ricardo
He's so
Montalban.
good. I mean, he's
He's
so charismatic in that role.
Yeah.
Big time.
Those flowing blonde locks, the ladies loved it.
Were they blonde?
Yeah.
No.
No, they weren't blonde. Not in the series.
No, it's white.
Yeah, not in the
It's
series.
white.
No,
It's white in
it's-
Wrath
White.
of Khan.
Yeah.
But in
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
the series
thinking
is-
of the white
Yeah,
and the bare chest.
Yeah.
And
The
those-
series, it's pulled back. Isn't
And
it?
it's
Yeah.
Black.
If ever a man
Is
had
it?
cleavage,
Man.
it would
Is
be Ricardo
he
Montalban.
playing someone of Indian descent?
He's
Yes.
supposed to be
Technically,
yes, yes.
technically, he's a genetic mixture, but he was
Okay.
raised in India. They
Yes.
filled in his whole backstory.
But his name is Indian.
But yeah, he was
origin,
raised. Yeah, he was raised there, and Khan's a title.
Even if the actor is Latin.
So he's
Yeah.
not related to Khan.
Yeah,
Indian
is he
suit.
from... He's Mexican. The actor is Mexican.
Yes.
I
He's
looked-
not related to what?
Khan Noonien Soon? Khan Singh?
They're
There was
very
some
similar names.
non-canon books where they tried to say that they was descended, and they like changed the name a little bit.
And we'll talk about it more in Enterprise. In 25 episodes.
But I mean,
Right? Can we remember that? Should we write this down?
Oh, we'll
Take
remember.
your own notes.
Be in an Excel sheet.
I have other number 3s and an honorable mention.
Man, my 2 and 3 haven't been mentioned either.
Well, you go first.
Danger and Devil in the Dark.
That's one of my number 3s.
I
I
think-
love it.
Is that where they're killing the baby eggs thing?
But they don't know what it is.
But they don't
no.
know what it
Well,
is.
it's the Horta.
yes.
Somewhere in the past, I thought that salt monster was called the Horta.
Yeah.
I don't know why. But yes, the Horta that's silicon based.
And it's just a big blob of somebody kind of shimmying
And
on the floor.
that's Bones' infamous bricklayer.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, well, I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's
It
a
also has a-
lovely story.
It's a great story, and
She's a mom.
she's just defending. She
Don't
looks
kill
like
her
this
babies.
monster. They think we enter it as this monster killing all of these people, and she's just protecting her egg. So I think that is an important. I think that it falls right in line with the Star Trek philosophy. It was really
Don't judge the book by its cover.
and
Very much
seeking
so.
new life, and
It's a good conflict between Spock and Kirk because at first Kirk was like, "You're gonna kill it," and Spock's like, "Well, wait," and then they switch because Kirk's trapped and Spock's like, "Just kill it."
Yeah.
And Kirk's like, "No, wait." I liked it.
But he also mind melds with the creature, and
So is that the
Is
first?
that the first Mind
I think
Meld?
I think it is, or at least the first significant one where there's like a whole play off of it. I just love that one so much.
And there's a good, I don't know which character this is more important for, but Kirk telling Bones that he's going to help the creature. You have to, that's your patient, you're the doctor. And him not knowing what to do, and he figures it out and does it.
Yeah.
It's a good episode for the characters, and it's a good episode of Star Trek, and it's just really entertaining. My number 3 is, so 4 was Balance of Terror. Sorry, guys.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Number,
That's fine.
Number 3 was another pretty well-known one, the Galileo 7.
Oh, that'd probably be my 4th if it.
I don't have that ranked. That's the one where they're
They're
stranded in the shuttlecraft.
And they're
Yeah.
essentially all being illogical humans, and Spock's like,
He makes.
he's using his logic to make them survive, and then they're just like piling on him their frustration and their anger. But what he's doing is keeping them alive.
Yes.
That's easily
Well,
my
'cause they
favorite
wanna-
Spock episode.
It's a great Spock episode. Like, they want to save the body of
Yeah.
a crewman that's died, and he's trying to save them, and because he's half Vulcan, they're thinking it's only because he has no emotions and he doesn't care about them when he's putting the emotions aside to save them.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that episode a lot. I just don't rank it.
And also, I think the 2 crewmen that died are not red shirts in that one.
Nope, they're not.
I think the
didn't
only red shirts are Scotty
them
and Uhura in that one.
Maybe.
Yeah.
They're the only ones wearing red, but
Yeah.
Plus, when I was a kid, that's one of the few things, like, that giant thing scared me. Like, when he's throwing the spears at him.
Although he
Yeah.
wasn't very good at the spears. So that's your 1, 2, and 3.
I admit I know I've seen that episode, but that one has not registered with me.
You should rewatch
Yeah,
it.
I think
Galileo
I need
7?
to.
The
Yeah.
ending is the best part.
Okay, yeah.
Because Spock does makes what seems to be an illogical emotional decision.
I mean,
of
and
course, rationalizes it away in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's kind of, there's other episodes in the other Star Trek series that kind of pay homage to it with like 2 or 3 characters trapped somewhere.
Oh,
and,
sure.
And there's always
Yeah, yeah.
callbacks to it. It's one of those ones where there's echoes of it repeated.
My other number 3 that hasn't been mentioned yet is Errand of Mercy. This is the
Klingons.
one. The
So,
Klingons, yep. So
And,
Just
where-
remember that
where's the-
diplomat's like, "Ooh, I don't care."
it's the one with the planet that doesn't want to get involved in the violence. The Klingons are going to try to come conquer them, and the Enterprise is landing them, trying to convince them to leave, but they're like, no, we're not going to leave, and you're all too violent, go away. And then the Klingon commander comes, and he comes later to Deep Space Nine, and I can't remember what his name is.
Core. One
Yes.
of Jedzia's friends.
Yes. So he...
Curzon.
Yeah.
I think
One
one
of
of
Dax's
3,
friends.
Klingons from the original series that came back.
Yeah.
I think 4. 3.
Oh, Kor,
Four-
Koloth.
Unless this is the same one, because Trouble with Tribbles, that Klingon. I don't know if that's also one of Jadzia's friends, but he's also in Trials and Tribulations, still looking like a human.
Yeah.
And then
There's
Jadzia has
there's
3
two of them.
Klingons.
Two of those Klingons from the Tribbles episode are in, because she sees them in
Kor, Koloth, and Kang?
Kang,
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay, there.
and then plus the evil one, Arn Darvin or whatever, the one that looks human.
Yes.
If you count him too.
Which we'll talk about
We
when we
will.
get to Deep Space Nine. But for the purposes of this, Errand of Mercy, I just think is a really, really good Klingons versus Federation episode. Plus, I love the twist at the end, where the race of non-violent people is really just like this super evolved race and sets everything aright and sends them on their merry way to think about their warring selves.
And I
Even
believe
though
those
that doesn't
Organians
change.
appear in other series too.
They do.
Which ones? I don't remember them appearing in other seasons.
Pretty sure they do.
That doesn't mean they don't. I was just wondering if you knew
That's
offhand.
a lot of
Don't.
thinking I'm going to have to
I think
do.
they're in, I think they make an appearance in Enterprise.
I think I was
Oh.
going to say Enterprise, but I wasn't sure because
don't know Enterprise
I
as
didn't
well.
watch all of that one yet. So,
I promise you it gets
Yeah,
better.
there's the episode of Enterprise when they're non-corporeal and they're possessing 2 of the crewmates and they're trying to decide if humans are too warlike.
Yeah.
And then they're like going from one crew to then to another, jumping from bodies.
so here are my
excited to
honorable
rewatch.
mentions. I also like Where No Man Has Gone Before because that was basically the pilot that was trying to substitute for
The Shatner pilot.
the Shatner pilot, and it's really, really, it's just a very excellent story about man's folly in playing God, and it's one of the, so when people make lists of essential Trek episodes, that one always features.
Can you
because
tell us what happens in that one again?
ESP, Espers.
And it's James T. Kirk's friend.
Yeah.
James
Gary
R. Kirk in
Mitchell.
that
I
episode.
know,
that's
they made a
true.
mistake on the gravestone.
Well, it's the first
It's
time.
an early episode, so
Yeah.
a lot of the canon doesn't. I mean, I think early episodes of Star Trek, don't even put it in the 2200s. I think there are references to it being like 2900 something. It's like, oh, that's weird. But anyway, it's James Kirk's best friend gets like these ESP abilities and basically turns into this godlike character. And
there's a scientist with him that's a female, and she
Yeah.
gets the powers too, and
Got it.
yeah, it again has a really good punchline. It has a lot of social commentary, and that was kind of their redo first one out of the gate. I mean, what a strong episode. And then the other one I'm just going to give a little shout out to, and it's probably not everybody's favorite, but I like it because I have such an affection for Spock. And that's This Side of Paradise, which is when he gets emotionally affected
spores
by
or
the
whatever.
spores.
Yep.
Because he gets a little romance and it's cute.
Yep. That's
Oh,
a
it's
great episode.
it's
I
worth
like
it.
that
Episode.
one.
I like that one.
My least favorite episode is Charlie X.
That's one of mine as
No.
well.
I don't think
Yeah, that
everyone
kid's-
said their favorites yet, have they?
Really?
Has everyone
No,
said-
I haven't.
Michael, say your favorites.
Well, you've all been talking about all of them, so
You
I
have
feel
to
like
interject with this
I feel
crowd.
like it's all anticlimactic
You're lucky
now.
Hillary and Spencer aren't here too. You'd never get in a word in
That is
edgewise.
true.
Just
Yeah.
go.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to listen to everyone and let everyone talk.
Oh, well, you
Anyway,
don't have
no,
to.
just kidding.
Go.
Everyone's already said, like, my favorite episodes. I love City on the Edge of Forever.
Is that your
love...
number one?
I'm not good at ranking. That's
That was
my
the
problem.
job.
Well,
Yeah.
for the third episode, you'll have to do that. But for
Okay,
now,
yeah.
you
I know, and I'm going to have to work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love that episode. I think it's just absolutely brilliantly written in spite of the tortured history of the writing. I actually want to give a shout out to The Squire of Golthos, which is the episode with Trelane,
Oh,
which is the
Trelane.
precursor to
bring it
Q.
Wow, that's not canon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Clear inspiration. I mean, to not see a Q-like similarity in that would be ridiculous.
Oh, similar characters. If
Yes.
that's what you meant. There are people
Well,
who tried to say
okay.
he is a Q, and
He's
Okay,
not a
I
Q.
have- I have
Although they
read
have
Q Squared
retroactively
by
made
Peter
God
David.
from part 5 is a Q.
who's they?
Like the people that are in charge, Michael Akuda and
Oh, really?
Denise and
Akuda?
that- yeah.
It was like, God, yeah. That guy.
Yeah, he's a renegade Q that was locked away behind the barrier.
I've read Q Squared by Peter David. It's in there. But anyway,
I'm going to argue that, but that's okay.
I
Trelane,
think
got
I
it.
like Trelane's character. I like the whole idea of the all-powerful character that uses that antiquity to play with people, and it's, I don't know, I like that episode. I love the playfulness of it. I also like let's see, where I had it in mind. I actually like Naked Time. That's another one of my favorites.
I had that on my list for a brief time, but took it off. And the only reason I took it off was because when The Next Generation did its first season, they basically recycled original series episodes.
Well, they did that a lot in the first season of
we'll
Next Generation.
We'll
yes,
talk
but
about
anyway.
that. So then I was like, can I really pick that one? I'm not going to pick any of them ever.
No, I like it because I like the way, even though it's early, I mean, most fans, most critics would tell you that these episodes, even The Naked Now and The Naked Time, suffer because they play with the character dynamics and the character, the established character roles that they all play too early, because it's literally only the second or third episode and they're already playing with, like, Sulu's gonna be go naked and goes be a samurai, and and Spock's gonna have emotions, and they're already playing with the character roles that these characters have been falling into, and like the fourth episode. But I don't know, I like it. I just like the playfulness of it and the way they decide to switch things up, even if it is early in the show's run. So that's one of those shout-outs I want to give. And, of course, I think Where No Man Has Gone Before is a freaking brilliant episode, the epitome of Star Trek, and how the essence of exploration and all of the metaphors and themes are there. So, yeah.
Nobody said the Corbel maneuver.
I was going,
but I just want to shout out Clint Howard.
Right.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to do. I don't really care that much about that episode, but I think he's kind of an icon.
I actually like that episode very much, too.
He's an icon in general, but I was going to bring up because he's like on the list of, he's almost there. A friend of Trek, because he's in so many of the shows.
Yeah.
There's other actors who are like, they're in so many episodes and have played so many different characters, but he's kind of one of the first because he's the throwback to the original series. They don't, unfortunately, bring him back in Next Gen, but he's in Deep Space Nine and he's in Enterprise. He's got some other stuff, but yeah, I'm glad you brought him up.
That one's, I like it. It just is not one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a classic one. Another classic one that nobody mentioned that I think is worth mentioning is Arena.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
People like that one.
Isn't that the one where he fights the
Gorn?
The Gorn, yes.
And
that's an iconic episode.
I know!
Yeah.
People who haven't even seen Star Trek
know that episode.
Clips of him fighting the Gorn with a rock and him jumping
so
at
funny.
it.
Shirtless.
Yep.
That's at least one of the shirtless quota. He always had to be shirtless and kissing.
Oh yes.
But it's a good episode. It shows Kirk at his best. It
Yeah.
has the other. I think when people think about it, they don't realize that the real antagonist is another species.
Yeah.
That I don't even know if we ever see. It's just a voice.
It's just a voice.
I think there's a holographic kind of shimmery image of something, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have much definition.
Well, and that's a theme that gets revisited later, too. I could think of at least a Voyager episode where there's people watching people duke it out.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Good job, Gorn.
Oh, are you saying the Rock is the Voyager's Gorn?
I don't know what's happening.
Episode of Voyager. With
What
the
were you-
Rock.
We'll get to it, apparently.
Are we on worst episodes? Yes, I agree. Charlie X is one of the
Yes,
worst.
Charlie X
Stop
is
rolling your eyes
Which
up in
one's
your head.
Charlie X?
The
He
guy
is-
rolls his eyes up into his head.
And they do the close up on him, and
The annoying little teenager who escapes off the planet and then gets drawn back to the
Yeah.
planet.
That one's bridge-worthy.
yeah, it's my least favorite. I will say that season one's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a
Generally
solid
pretty
season. I
good.
can't think of a single episode other than Charlie X that's like cringe-inducing.
I
just
put Enemy
terrible.
Within because I can't watch it because of this weird sexual assault and
Well,
also
yeah, no,
the
that's a
just
good point.
blatant like
Mhm.
simpering Kirk. It feels like it goes on too long for me,
Yeah.
and I just want them to solve that problem quicker. But I mean, I don't. That's not like my personal hell to have to watch that. It's just
Yeah.
if I had.
I mean,
to
that's
pick
one of the most. It's for, like, I don't hate it, but yeah, I don't really think about it when I think about this season.
No.
Right. It's
But that dog.
well, it's also again one of the more iconic.
That was
But
funny.
the image of the dog, I think, stands out not as much as the Gorn, but the one that is split with the horns and the fur.
he's furry.
It's clearly
I was
wearing
going
the
to
fursuit.
say
It's
that
bad.
I think it's kind of an iconic episode just because it's the transporter accident and you get the evil Kirk versus the non-evil Kirk.
And it does set up transporter accidents.
Right,
Yeah,
We're
but I mean,
kind of
if we're
like-
talking about transporter accidents, the top is Mirror Mirror.
Oh,
that's
agreed.
true.
That's a much
true.
better
That's very true.
transporter.
Nuh-uh. What about
Oh.
Star Trek the Motion Picture?
Oh my god, that's
Oh, that
horrible.
image.
I
That's
remember-
That's why I would, if that
traumatizing.
technology exists, I would never use it.
Yeah.
Hold up. Mirror Mirror Season 2, that's for our movie episode. Proceed.
Yeah, but come
We're
on,
talking about
though.
in context with
Yeah.
this episode.
It's
buttoned down.
Comparing other transporter accidents.
Yeah, Kylie. Don't tell me I don't remember. All I remember from that movie is that transporter accident.
That's the only thing worth
Yeah.
remembering.
And the bald lady.
What
Yeah.
about Viger?
V'ger.
The creator of the Borg.
Yeah.
Is that canon?
That's
Yes,
canon.
That is
Canon.
canon, yes. That is now canon.
It was. That's why V'ger says resistance is futile, and then Gene Roddenberry wrote it in, but he died before he could fill in their backstory. But it is now considered canon because he had all his notes and everything.
It's an Enterprise, isn't it?
No.
Or
Well,
not
the Borg
Dragon.
are in Enterprise, but it's a direct result of the
First
what happened in
Contact.
First Contact.
Oh, okay.
So to the original series, I
What are
didn't
we-
like The Conscience of the King.
I was gonna, you know what? I was
What's that
gonna
one?
mention that because I
That
was
is
like,
the Shakespeare actor guy, and there's this really histrionic woman in it, and
I was
I
gonna say that-
honestly
that's another
tried
one
to
that
watch
doesn't-
it 3 times
Yeah.
this go around and fell asleep the first 2 times.
Can I
I was gonna
just
say
be
that's another one
honest
that
about
doesn't
something?
resonate with me at all.
You keep saying histrionic, and I don't know what that word means. There, I've said it.
Overly dramatic. Like
Okay,
hysteric-
all right, all
like-
right.
Yeah, it comes
Thank
from
you.
hysterical.
Sorry. Not good at the book.
She's a math teacher, folks.
Oh, and remote.
Um,
I just didn't
For
know
the
that
most
word.
part, that episode's pretty forgettable, but I like that it filled in a little bit more of Kirk's backstory and kind of some of the stuff that drives him. Like, he's a survivor, like when he's on the colony, he's one of 2 survivors. I feel like that's important.
It's got important information, but it's super
But yeah.
boring, and the woman annoys me. The Lady Macbeth. So
She's the
No.
murderer.
But I did like the
That
twist,
one
though, that it
does
wasn't,
not resonate.
that it was the innocent-looking daughter.
true.
I mean, it had a good twist, but yeah, otherwise it's middle of the road compared to the highs of this.
Correct.
We didn't mention a kind of famous character that
Mud?
Discovery, we get
That's also on my worst.
Who?
Mud of
Mud
Mud.
swimming.
That guy.
His
But he
other
is
episode's
reoccurring, yeah.
better,
Yeah.
but this one's pretty icky.
He's just like a supersonic pimp.
Pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Con man, intergalactic con man.
But
And
he's
the-
pimping out the women.
I was saying this one a pimp, yeah, but then in later ones he's more.
And he's
kind of
giving them
anything
drugs.
Yeah.
He's the worst.
And that is like, wasn't it?
the people loved him.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Brought him back.
They were trying to make. It was like, hey, we need a lighthearted episode, so let's do an episode with a crazy character who's a criminal and a con man who likes to drug women and
Who are
yeah.
desperate
Trying
just to get married.
Yeah, sell
Yeah.
them off to the
Uh-huh.
highest bidder to be the wife.
Yeah.
Those not apply. Those do not apply. Well, that's what it is.
Well, yeah, he drugs them for beauty. It's icky.
Yeah.
It
yeah.
doesn't. It
I
doesn't
mean,
hold
I will
up.
say, I like the Discovery Rainn Wilson Mud better than the
I haven't
original
watched
series
it
Mud.
yet.
Yeah, no
Rainn
spoilers.
Wilson?
Hashtag.
Yeah. It's
Hashtag
Dwight
no
Schrute as
spoilers.
Mud.
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
He's a real good actor. He can do anything.
he's
Yeah,
better.
he's
He's,
good
I
on
was
6
gonna
Feet
say
Under.
he makes the character a lot more interesting than we see here.
I have subscribed to All Access, by the way, so
Okay, yeah.
Good to
Give me
know.
a...
Yeah, maybe in a couple months when we're ready to watch.
yeah, I know. I'm just saying. But yeah,
So
I mean, I've seen
much.
the first episode. It's really good, and I think I'm going to cry. So anyway, can proceed. We're on the original series. We have so many more
There-
episodes.
Yeah, I mean Miri is pretty
Oh,
high
yeah,
up
Miri.
there with the kids that are aging. What is it? A day every 100 years or something ridiculous? But they're going insane. Is that
I
Miri?
actually kind of
Yeah,
like
Miri.
that
Yeah.
one,
I like
except
that
for
one.
the uncomfortable dynamic of being a little too paternalistic, and she's in love with him.
Yeah, that's problematic again by today's lens, but back then it was probably like, oh, isn't it cute?
Well,
and
and
the
it
little
was
girl
like-
is in love with the guy, you know.
But I still like that episode.
And the twist is kind of she's actually 400 years old, but it's a little girl playing.
yeah. And one of the little boys was Dill in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Aww.
That's
Really?
very important. Yes.
Oh.
Interesting.
Very important.
That's a very good movie, and it's one of my favorites.
Yeah. It also has like this zombie apocalypse feel to it.
It does. I thought it was, again, a little bit ahead of its time in what it was doing and telling, and
He was trying to be a space western, too.
a little bit.
It was like a little ghost town.
Star Trek, and I don't know how many other shows, especially back then, were able to do it. they used the lens of science fiction to play into other genres.
Oh yeah, totally.
A lot.
The Western thing was intentional. The show was originally pitched as Wagon Train to the Stars.
That's true.
And Wagon Train was
Which
one of
is
those
a line
ones-
from Stand
Yeah.
By Me.
Mhm.
Wagon Train is a really cool show, but have you ever noticed they never get anywhere? They just keep wagon training. I highly recommend this movie.
Probably not.
Okay. After this retrospective, but man, we still gotta watch the animated series. I got it from a student as a gift. Shout out Isaac if you're listening, and I love
Hi,
it.
Isaac.
Thank you.
I haven't opened it yet. He does like TV, and he does listen upon occasion, so he might be listening. I don't know.
That's a good name. Good name, Isaac.
Which makes me want to do an episode on Orville, but
We've already got that as an entry and you're already attached to
Okay.
it. Settle down. Anything else you want to... Any other episodes you want to highlight? Have we
You
touched
pretty
on...
much
I mean, I don't know if
on
we-
all of them in some aspect.
I don't know how
mean,
much you talked about shore leave, and that probably being
Oh.
the epitome of insanity. Like,
I don't think I like that one very much.
let's
Is that
go to the fanciful, to the extreme.
The rabbit. And
See, I have a hard time watching that one just because the guy that Kirk keeps seeing, Finnegan, is so annoying.
Yeah,
and it plays
yeah.
that like Irish
Annoying.
music every time he's on it. It's like, I have such a hard time watching
Man,
it.
he's
they
holding
really
Lucky
want you to
Charms
know.
cereal.
Yeah,
It's so
they
weird.
really want you to know.
I
I'm
don't
embarrassed.
hate it, but I don't love it.
It stands out.
It stands
Good or
out.
bad, it stands out.
Yeah.
That's one of the few.
That
that
white
actually-
rabbit.
Bones
That's just a
has...
person.
Bones is very bonesy.
Just a
You get a lot of bones in that episode,
do.
so I think that's
And
why
he
I don't
dies.
hate it.
And
Yeah,
a lot of
for
stock
minute.
footage of a World War II plane.
That's one of the few that's
Mystery.
actually filmed on location, as opposed into a really, I don't want to say fake looking, but a fake looking studio.
No, yeah, they had more of a budget in the season 1, which is why you saw a lot more outdoor locations.
Yeah.
Fast Gus rocks. Like 3 times.
That clearly they weren't
I think
spending
I
the money
feel
on
like
costumes.
Arena's the first time we see those rocks,
It is,
at least
yeah.
good enough where, like, when you see them in Next Gen repeatedly, they stand out.
Have we talked about Kirk's green jacket yet?
Tunic?
His
Yeah.
tunic?
No, we haven't.
Interesting,
talked
yes.
about-
Why should we talk about this?
I
I'm
don't
curious.
know. It's so funny.
It is kind of funny that he has this special green tunic.
It's like a
Well,
smoking
do
jacket.
you know why?
No.
I
So-
do. Is it because they kept shrinking? The costumes kept
Part of-
shrinking. and they
Yeah,
would
part of
wash
it is
them?
that. Like, they were the linen that they were made of.
And he
when-
does seem to start gaining weight over the course of this series.
Yeah, but
But
I
I mean,
think
he was like a starving actor to a lead, so I'm sure as he got his paychecks, he was probably...
Eating.
I think we see the green tunic more and more because it's adjustable, but if you notice the background actors, their short sleeves are really short, and that was what the main cast was wearing until it shrank and it would go back to the background actors. The tunic was just easier to keep up with.
I enjoy the green tunic.
I didn't say either way. I just
Do
wanted
you like
to talk
it more
about
on Kirk or on Bakula? On Archer in the Mirror episodes.
Bakula.
You'll be mad.
He's in my 5. Like I love Bakula.
So old now.
I do not care.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a loss. I mean, I've known her a long time.
I love him.
And he has never not been on her 5.
And he never will not be. There is an opening because Bill Paxton died, but other
All
than
right.
that,
Can't
I'm pretty
Bill
sad.
Pullman just slide in? They're
No.
Basically the
No,
same.
no,
That was poor word
not
choice.
yeah. And that's my husband.
Whoa.
We haven't talked about favorite characters.
Spock and Bones. I
Yeah,
did.
you did. You're right. And I think maybe we all kind of just agreed. It's hard too, because I do... Maybe when we get to the movies, it'll be easier because we see more of the characters. But I do enjoy Uhura and Chekhov, but Chekhov's not here to talk about yet.
Yeah, not yet.
But Bones is by far my favorite. He
I
still
like-
is watching it again.
Yeah, there's not one of these characters I don't like. I
Yeah,
just
totally. There's
love
not. Mhm.
The dynamic.
the dynamic.
Oh, I have a
Every single one
moment
of
I
them
wanted
is
to
such a great
mention.
character.
My
What?
favorite dynamic between them, the moment is the episode, I forget what it's called, but Spock goes blind at the very end. Bones whispers something to a compliment to Kirk.
I think that's like it's got to be a later season.
And Kirk
I
goes-
want
No,
to see
that's
you.
season 1.
It
Oh,
is
it is?
season 1.
Yeah.
He's like, you were so concerned with his Vulcan eyes, you forgot about his Vulcan hearing.
Oh, yeah.
No.
So like,
yeah.
so
Which
he
one is
overhears the
that?
compliment.
Is that
Operation Annihilate.
It's the last one.
It
yeah.
is Operation Annihilate.
That's a great episode too. I knew.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, I remember that now.
You asked our favorite characters, and Nick, and then you didn't give us a chance to say them, but I'm going to
You didn't stop
Uhura.
recording.
Dynamics.
I'll tell Kylie them. I say Uhura, although I can never say her name.
Uhura.
Uhura. It's not how it looks. It looks like Uhura.
It's Uhura.
Yeah, I can't say it, but I like her.
She speaks Swahili. She's South African.
I like her. And Nurse Chapel.
I love
Nurse
Chapel.
Chapel's
We'll
great.
get more of her though.
She's amazing. And although Janet Rand, Janice isn't one of my favorites, I have to shout out her checkerboard hairdo. Her hair is
I
like
wonder
woven
how long
in it.
they did that.
That's a wig.
Oh, well, clearly, but still, the wig
it
itself.
was. Yeah. mhm.
Yeah,
I
I
probably
wanna-
have taken forever.
And I do like her. We don't have her very long. The actress had some problems and had
Yeah.
to leave the show. Although
She's
she
in the
came back
background
in
in
the
a couple
movies.
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't she
Never
supposed to be like her basic function on the show was to be the love interest, but they never developed it. Like they never
Was she
got a
supposed to be
chance
the
to
love interest?
because
She was originally planned as to be eventual love interest for Kirk. But
yeah, I
then
mean they
decided
keep
not to
alluding
go.
to it.
There was going to be a slow build up, and then they
Mhm.
decided to just do like
She does
Individual in case they
clearly
aired a live
pine
episode.
for him.
yeah, I mean
Until he
She
tries to
clearly-
rape
Yeah,
her,
totally.
and then she's like out.
and then
But then
apparently
he also-
transferred off the Enterprise.
He
Yeah.
also talks about how his first love is the ship, even though he's kissing all these other women. So it's
Oh,
I mean,
in every
It's hard to kiss
spaceport.
a ship.
Well, and then his soulmate Edith Keeler, he had to watch her die.
well,
He had to
it is.
let her
Emotionally
die.
stunted.
He had to
It's so
let her
tragic.
die. It's
To
tragic.
prevent any bones from saving her.
Collins, she's amazing.
She is quite amazing. You consider her career, but that's a Joan Collins podcast,
Yeah.
which we're not doing right
But
now.
I'm shouting her out.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about the first season of Star Trek, the original series? We cover all of them, you know.
I think
That's true.
you mentioned the Dr. King story, but Uhura, the first African American woman astronaut, credits
Mae Jameson.
seeing
Mhm.
Uhura on TV and actually inspiring her to go into being.
Hashtag representation matters.
Mhm.
And Whoopi Goldberg tells the story when she first turned on Star Trek. She ran into the kitchen saying, "Mom, look, there's someone on TV that looks like us, and she's not a maid." Like
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
A
You really
Dum
can't-
story when Whoopi Goldberg met Nichelle Nichols, they just ran and hugged each other without having ever known each other before, just
Mhm.
because Guinan was kind of the torchbearer on that bit of it. So
You really can't state enough just how incredibly important this show is to the consciousness of the United States culture.
international.
Technology.
International,
everything.
yeah.
Oh,
but
we
I
didn't
mean,
talk about
US in
technology,
particular.
but we have more episodes. But
Yeah.
there was a space shuttle called the Enterprise. It was named after the show. Fans petitioned for that.
Yes.
An engineer got sick of people telling him, "Why don't we have doors that open automatically?" He's like, "You guys really want that? That's easy." It was inspired by Star Trek.
Well, it's like, and you watch Star Trek, you don't even think anything when they go into Kirk's quarters and he has a laptop desk there. Like,
Yeah.
like in the 60s, like, how would they even consider
In the
that?
60s, it filled a
Cell
room.
phones, they
Well, yeah,
have their
I mean,
little...
the
cell
communicators
phones.
flipped up like a
Susan
flip
Bennett,
phone.
the voice of Siri, sounds eerily like Majel Barrett.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
and-
like, with this, who knows how much of the world we live in now would be the way it is without this show in this first season, which set the template for everything to come.
Even
I mean,
to a less
yeah.
extent, fandom, like
Yeah.
the conventions we have now all the time.
Are based on Star Trek conventions.
It's insane how much its tentacles reach. And people will, obviously the context of her not being in a lot, and people will joke, "Oh, you have the African American answering phone calls." Neil deGrasse Tyson says it best. When she's the one, she represents humanity. She's the first person new species talks to. Like, that means
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I don't know, it's just a little bit more than TV to me.
That's on
Bye-bye.
par with your, that's on par with your impassioned speech from our appearance at Grand Rapids Comic-Con in 2017.
So long ago.
You didn't give the speech in 18. So, just wanted to say that.
It has to come up naturally.
Anything else you want to say about Star Trek for now? Because we have more to go.
This
Yeah,
first
we can-
season made me want to say, okay, what's next? Yeah, we'll see. What's the second season going to be like?
That's a very good
Amazing.
question, Michael.
Yes.
And what a lovely segue, because in our next episode, we'll be covering season 2 of Star Trek, the original series. And since that's such a natural segue, what I'm going to do right now is thank Sarah, Nick, Michael, and Kyle for joining me for this mega series. And because I've thanked them, it's now time for the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kelsey Rezmer. Kelsey played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole kit and caboodle was engineered and produced by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Give us stars, give us comments, give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Send us a message. We might just read it on the podcast. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what we should keep, what we should toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via our social media, Facebook, Twitter at CPU Podcast, and Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. We always have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Just listen to our intros. And if you miss old episodes or want to know in general what we cover, just find us. We are everywhere and searchable wherever you look for things on the internet. You can search for us, or you can subscribe at our website, our channels, our social media accounts. Stay up on our new events and episodes. Until the next time, all of the Trek series of the past, with the exception of Discovery, are available on just about every streamer you can think of, so we're not going to give preference unless one of them chooses to sponsor us. In the meantime, our Star Trek 50 Plus series panel will next reconvene to discuss Season 2 of the original series and Part 2 of this Looking Back retrospective very shortly. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned.
Bye-bye.